Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Alchemy of Love podcast, where we are going to be diving into inner healing for healthy relationships. We're going to be talking about transforming the way that we connect, healing old wounds, understanding attachment styles, untangling codependent behavior that we may have developed as a result of childhood experiences, trauma bonds, toxic dynamics, masculine, feminine energy, healing from an imbalanced way of using feminine or masculine energy. We go deeper into metaphysics, soul contracts, psychic energy in your relationships, conscious communication. So let's begin with today's episode. This is the season number 2. I have one season of this on my own. And if you have not checked it out, go check it out, because I talk about all of the stuff that we are going to be diving into in all of the next episodes. Ryan and I are going to be doing this podcast together from now on. So I started with this podcast in 2023, and I already said it in a few blogs and videos. What I didn't realize at the time was that that podcast was basically a way for me to also share this whole healing journey that I was going through and recognizing attachment styles, but also recognizing how a lot of these typical polarity teachings, attachment style, relationship teachings are very limiting. A lot of teachers will put things in boxes. So what I did with the first season is kind of go into these popular teachings and give a more metaphysical twist to them, and also see where there was some validity in these teachings, but how I basically applied them in my own life. So we're going to talk today a little bit about attachment styles and affection and childhood. But I did a poll a couple of days ago in my Instagram story, and Ryan is here, by the way. Say hello.
Hello.
So I did a poll where I asked some questions about relationships, attachment styles, what people knew or how aware people were of their own attachment style and patterns when it comes to relationships. And this is not just limited to romantic relationships, but our romantic partnership is usually going to be the most amplified container where we will see these attachment styles clearly. So yeah, basically what we want to share today is that the definition of what is love, what is affection, what is healthy love and affection, that is very different for everybody, and a lot of it comes from childhood, a lot of it comes from your underlying attachment style or program, because a lot of attachment styles can also actually be trauma responses. So people put it in boxes and say, oh, I am an avoidant attachment style, I am an anxious person, and a lot of it simply comes from how your caregivers interacted with you in childhood, and then it is up to us as adults to bring ourselves to a secure attachment style and going back to those childhood experiences sometimes. Anything?
Not specific. I mean, my attachment styles, I think, have shifted over time. And I feel like I had a mix of a bunch of different ones.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, when I was in the past relationship that ended up getting married, that was the first, like, conscious relationship. But I was very, like, anxious. It was, like, anxious, but I pretended that I wasn't anxious, and I was also, like, somewhat avoidant. but then it shifted over time, and now it feels much different.
Mm-hmm.
Feels very different.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people have a mix of attachment styles. And if you go back to season 1, I think there's an episode where I talk about the fluidity of these attachment styles too. There is value to learning about the attachment styles and seeing where you kind of fit in. But what also came out of the poll was that for a lot of people, they shift, their attachment style shifts depending on who they are with. And a lot of it is a direct connection to a pattern that you subconsciously recognize in a person, and you're gonna maybe have a friend and they have a very similar attachment style or expression to your father. So what you're gonna do then is subconsciously interact in a very similar way with this friend because you recognize this similar energetic pattern. And so a lot of people that do that, they actually have a disorganized attachment style, and it's a mix of anxious and avoidant, and it's very hard for them to kind of stay secure consistently, regardless of who they are talking to. And I was definitely one of these people too. So what Ryan's saying, we had a very similar attachment style, although I think I leaned more towards being avoidant as the default. But I would definitely go back and forth, and I would not call it secure at all. But I think for me anyway, a lot of the healing in my relationships came through going through the difficult relationships for me and becoming aware of my attachment style, because the other person was also not in a secure place. And then you have two very contrasting people that are a mirror for the opposite. Like, if you have two secure people, it's fine, you're both just very secure and balanced. But if one of the two is extremely clingy and anxiously attached, you're automatically going to pull back and become more avoidant. And a lot of the time, these two polar opposites will attract each other because of those reasons. Is that what you have also experienced?
Yeah, I never even thought about attachment styles at all until I started going through the spiritual awakening process. Like, when I had a toxic relationship in like 2015, and then we broke up, and then I moved to New York. Like, she was very anxious, very attached. Like, she was very paranoid. She thought I was cheating on her all the time. um, and when we broke up, it's just not something that I even like thought about. It wasn't even a part of like what's on my mind. It just didn't register because I was so in the brainwashing from the childhood of like how I viewed women and how I viewed female people, because of the way that the affection that I had in childhood shaped my experience.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing. Affection, that was actually something that Ryan wrote down. Affection isn't love. Affection is not synonymous with love. And a lot of the times, there can be a lot of intimacy, there can be a lot of natural affection that happens when two people are secure. But it doesn't always have to be physical affection. It doesn't always have to result in this very physical expression of this affection. And I think that's definitely something that I have noticed with Ryan because we are both so secure. Because I actually do an attachment style quiz, and I mentioned it in the first season. I mentioned this quiz constantly. There's a very good link online. and I'll put it in the description. Every like once a year, I'll do an attachment style quiz because I want to see how I'm doing. And I remember when I did this quiz in 2022, it kept always saying disorganized attachment style, which is a mix of avoidant and anxious. And it, like little by little, it shows you, and I started leaning more towards the secure attachment style. And now for about a year, it's been like consistently always saying secure. So I'm like, okay. And where was I going with this? That I can tell that this validation, external validation of the relationship is not something I need. And I think for people who are either avoidant or anxiously attached, a lot of the time, they are subconsciously seeking the external validation through, they need basically compliments, they need hugs, they need physical touch, because they are leaning outside of themselves for validation of the relationship. And I think in the past I've like played like the cat and mouse game with previous partners, where either I was the one doing this or I was the one running away from this, where they would have this need to get this validation and I would feel suffocated. And a lot of the time that is a big issue in relationships, where there is an imbalance in the need for affection, where they are viewing it through this tunnel vision view of, this is what affection is, this is what love looks like. If you don't hug me 10 times a day, you don't love me. And it's this thing they have in their mind where, and the irony of the whole thing is, because we have kind of detached from the need of the attachment to each other, that we can sit in a room together and each do our own thing, and I'll feel more connected and attached to Ryan than I have felt to previous partners, even when we don't say a word to each other.
Yeah, I think for me it was like the overcompensating with affection. Like it's like love, from what I understood love was the giving of my emotion, was like giving compliments, was giving affection, because that was this overcompensation of the void and the disconnection that was actually there. Because as we've both talked about, going through abusive experiences, that affection can be used to maintain a cycle of gaslighting, of using the other person to a point where then you overcompensate affection to them to make them feel like, oh, that you still care about them, basically. And so for me, then that created avoidance of the attachment of affection, but then at the same time I was in a loop of needing to overly give this affection. So it was like creating further distance in that middle ground that wasn't being met, which was like the heart-centered connection. Because for me, affection meant touching, kissing, giving compliments, like praising, like all of those things. And like you're saying, it's much different now. There isn't a sense of the exchange there.
It's
and
not
the
a transactional
yeah,
thing.
transaction. And the affection for me, because of the experience I had in childhood with Nancy and as the handler, affection is very connected to obsession for me as well. And so I dealt with so much affection because the person was obsessed with my energy and they needed my energy and they needed me to give that love back and they needed me to believe that in this affection, but then on the other side it was just being used through this obsession. And so it created this very weird relationship of affection for me, because then I would think like, if I'm going to give affection, am I doing it from this like shallow intent?
Yeah. And I think for me, that is something, because this is a relationship podcast, so we are also going to be talking about previous relationships because we've learned so much from it, and we're in this place together now where I wouldn't say enjoy, maybe kind of enjoy talking about previous relationships, but never from a judgmental point of view towards the other person, but always from a place of, wow, I see the difference between this older version of myself and the current version of myself, and where the growth took place. Because, and I was going somewhere with this, when I was in Spain with my ex, which was in 2022 and 2023, I also went through a whole awakening of my attachment style, basically. And that's when I recorded all of season 1 of this podcast, because I realized how much of the way I chose to react or say things or interpret things was based on the attachment style that I developed in my childhood, and how a lot of it was basically like I was giving my power away to this other person in the relationship and kind of evaporating into the relationship. And I then realized, okay, I need to fully reset this. So I did the full opposite, and that was like completely pull all my power back to myself. And from this neutral 0 point, basically, I then decided, okay, I want to only be with somebody if I am fully aware of why I am doing things, why I'm saying certain things, why I'm giving affection or desiring affection. I want to understand why I do the things I do in a relationship. And for that, in that moment, the best way to do this was to really be on my own and kind of really analyze my past. Does that make sense? And I think if you were one of the people that responded in the poll with, I have no idea what my attachment style is, I would definitely recommend taking this quiz. And in the next episode, I definitely want to maybe do a little breakdown again of what are the 4 attachment styles, because I do have an episode in season 1 where I do this, but together with Ryan, because I, of course, give this female perspective, but I think the next few episodes are going to be really valuable because now we're doing this together.
Yeah, and I think people start to kind of scoff at the concept of the inner child. When you go through spiritual work and healing and you've done a bunch of inner child work, I think people eventually think like, oh, like I graduate from that. Like that's not affecting me as much anymore. But they don't realize how integral that is. But what they're doing is they're trying to create this idea of them as a child from this point of view currently, rather than use it as an opportunity to just connect with the memory in the body, because that's what the point of that is like you're connecting with your inner child, but that's a memory, that's a time period that's in the body. So that's why we're doing that, so we can connect with the memory of it. So people give affection and they enter and they're in these relationships, but they're still doing it based off of these ideas that they haven't even really dealt with fully or have stopped dealing with. That is this like, it's just this aspect of time. And I think people try to explain it as this inner child work. And then it becomes this kind of like, oh, like, yeah, doing your inner child work. Like, I've seen a lot of judgment towards that. And it's like, come on, you're an adult. Like, it's time to stop giving all that attention to the inner child. It's like, yeah, I'm not letting my inner child make decisions for me. I'm connecting to it and connecting to that aspect of memory over and over and over and over and over again, because that's where I know that that relationship of affection and of love is coming from.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, because a lot of adults, when they get triggered in their relationship, for let's give an example. I tried, this is not something that happens with Ryan, but this is something that has happened with previous partners, where, let's say, for instance, somebody comes up to me, my partner, and they hug me, and I freeze and I say, like, leave me alone or something, and they get all mad and they storm off and they're personally offended because I didn't want to receive the hug. And like, in that moment, I'm gonna feel bad because, oh no, I'm not being a good little 6-year-old that doesn't want to hug the family members or something. And so as an adult, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, the inner child, oh, here we go again. But in that moment where I, in this hypothetical example, get triggered because I don't want to be hugged, it is basically the little 6-year-old that does not want to be hugged. So yes, I do have to go back to the 6-year-old to get the answer.
Yeah, and that's just an aspect of memory in your body. That's it. And you're connecting to the memory by working with that age that you were experiencing it at. And it doesn't need to be more complicated than that. But people then become obsessed with this affection towards their inner child that's this like fake affection, and they're not actually creating that middle heart-centered connection with the inner child by just being present with it. They're deciding to just give it affection and praise over and over and over again because that's what they thought they wanted and needed at that time. So now that's when we get the people who are the spiritual performers, who are they're so theatrical and dramatic, and the moment that you meet them, they're praising you of all these different things, and it's like it turns into this weird affection transaction, basically, because they think that that's what they needed as the child, because that's what they're doing for their inner child. So then they're going to project that onto other people, and that's when sometimes recently, within the last couple years, being in spiritual communities and stuff, I've gotten very avoidant towards that type of experience of the praising of affection, of all of the spiritual stuff. But then when we're together and we're showing each other affection, we're like praising things, but it's not in the same way.
No.
It's a different type of feeling. It's just a recognition, basically.
Yes.
Like, it's not like this theatrical compliment of this. It's just like, it's a recognition, it's an observation, it's explaining how we feel internally, and then recognizing it as like the fullness of what it is, rather than like trying to lift someone up to make them feel better.
And if this is if you're listening and you're like, I don't know what you mean, what the difference is, I'll give another example. And this ties into also codependency, trauma bonds, which is things I've talked about in season 1, and definitely separate topics for the next couple of episodes that are that we cannot dive into today. But stuff like codependency gets created through trauma bonds to your caretakers, and it doesn't have to be as extreme as what Ryan went through. It can be your parents get divorced and you then are with a parent that you feel like you have to constantly fight for their affection, and you feel unsafe because your parents got divorced and you're trying to do something to you're in survival mode. Let's say you're 4 years old and this happens, and then you develop a codependency on the parent that is with you, that is taking care of you, and you start fawning, people pleasing, you are not saying all these things for affection, because that is where you are gonna get your need, like your feeling of safety from, and it's a false feeling of safety, but it's something that you then create a coping mechanism, basically, in a traumatic situation. So you're gonna keep on doing this. So let's say, for example, this is not how we met, but let's imagine that I met Ryan at some festival, and he's like doing something there, and I don't know, he's like creating some kind of art, I don't know, and I'm very codependent and I want affection. I need to know that this person likes me, so I'm gonna go over there and start giving all these compliments. Oh, you're such a good painter, oh you this, oh you that, blah blah blah. And it's like very clearly coming from this place of anxiety of I need you to validate me back, because otherwise I feel unsafe and like you don't want to be my friend. So that's one example of how you can give compliments, and it's coming from a place of codependency. But for example, when we are together at home, we both are getting our creative needs met, the need for validation met from our inner passions. So let's say he's been working on a video that, and then like writing stuff down, he records the video, and I've been working on a blog all day and I've been writing, and I feel very good about myself. I don't necessarily need compliments about anything. I'm happy with what I'm doing, he's happy with what he's doing. Then we get together in the evening and we basically share what we've been doing, and he shows me his video, and I genuinely, from this place of feeling very good about what I'm doing, can say and recognize, oh, you are doing really good, I love this video, that was really good what you said there, and all this stuff. Then it becomes more of a sharing from within and not needing to receive something back. Like if he says nothing, or he just says thank you or whatever, it's not gonna change anything for me, because I said it because I have all this extra like genuine love to give, basically.
Yeah.
So I think this is enough for today. I think some questions that we want to leave you with after all of this would be, where are you perhaps giving affection where it is coming from a place of anxiety rather than pure joy that you feel within?
And can you give yourself the internal affection that is needed to then not give imbalanced or projected affection to others?
I think though we can do that every episode, like end with some reflection questions for self-reflection. So yeah, we kind of talked about affection, attachment styles, childhood. We can definitely dive deeper into the childhood, and like I said, there's so much to cover. We can talk about codependency, how to break free from codependent patterns, trauma bonds, just healthy communication, conscious communication, being triggered in your relationships, having different love languages. These are all things that we can talk about in the next episodes. Leave comments, give us feedback. What are specific things that you would like us to talk about when it comes to conscious relationships? That's why this is called the Alchemy of Love, because you can use your relationships to alchemize your trauma with love. So yes, that was the first episode of season 2. We will be back, and remember, you can also work with us. You can work with us on any trauma-related topic, spiritual topic, relationships, counseling, all kinds of stuff. You can find all the information in the description. We will be back.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.